There is a crow that lives near a park in Seattle. For 3 years, it has been leaving gifts on a woman's doorstep. Small, carefully chosen objects. A piece of blue glass, a rusted button, a single white pebble, smooth as a river stone. The woman didn't ask for this. She didn't train for it. She simply fed it once, years ago, and the crow never forgot. But here is the thing that keeps researchers up at night. The crow doesn't do this for everyone. It watches, it evaluates, and then quietly it decides, which raises a question that science has only recently begun to answer with any seriousness. When a bird watches you, really watches you, what exactly is it seeing? Almost everyone who spends time outdoors has felt it at some point. You're walking through a garden, standing at a window, sitting still somewhere in the open air, and you become aware of a bird, not flying away, not startled, not calling in alarm, simply watching you, still, steady, oriented directly toward your face. Most people dismiss it. An animal being an animal, a moment of accidental eye contact with a creature that doesn't really understand what it's looking at. But birdwatchers know differently. Those who spend real time in the field begin to notice a pattern that isn't written in any guidebook. Certain people consistently attract the attention of birds. Not just the obvious ones, the feeders, the regular visitors with pockets full of seed, but certain quiet walkers, certain gardeners, certain people who simply have a way of moving through a space without disturbing it. Birds come closer to them. Birds linger. Birds return. And, interestingly, the same people will often tell you they've always felt a connection to animals. They've always been aware of the natural world in a way they struggle to put into words. For a long time, this was considered anecdote, the kind of sweet observation that belongs in a nature journal, not a laboratory. Then scientists started paying closer attention. And what they found changed the conversation entirely. To understand what birds are actually doing when they watch a person, you have to understand what a bird's world is made of. Birds do not experience the world the way we do. Their sensory reality is layered, acute, and in several ways more detailed than ours. A songbird's eye covers roughly 300 degrees of vision without moving its head. It can detect motion we would never notice. It can see ultraviolet light invisible to us. Patterns on flowers, markings on feathers, signals encoded in a world we move through without ever perceiving. More relevant than what birds see is what they remember. In the early 2000s, Researcher John Marsloff at the University of Washington conducted a now famous series of experiments with American crows. His team wore latex masks while trapping and banding crows, a necessary but stressful procedure for the birds. The masks were of 2 types, a caveman face, worn during the trapping, and a neutral control mask. Years later, members of the crow population would still mob and scold people wearing the caveman mask. They taught their offspring to do the same. Crows that had never personally encountered the original trapping recognized the face and responded with hostility. Think about what this means. A crow held a grudge across years, across generations, across the ordinary forgetting that defines most of animal life. It didn't just react. It remembered. It taught. It passed cultural information, specific, individual information about a specific human face, to birds that had never had the original experience. This is not instinct. This is something closer to what we might cautiously call social memory. And if birds can remember a threat with that precision, what do they remember about kindness? The crow research opened a door. Scientists discovered that the capacity for individual human recognition is far more widespread in birds than anyone had expected. Mockingbirds, ravens, magpies, jackdaws, even certain pigeons and parrots can distinguish between individual human faces with startling reliability. But recognition alone doesn't explain the watching. What birds appear to be doing, constantly, almost compulsively, is assessment. They are reading the world for information about threat and safety, scarcity and abundance, familiarity, and in the unknown. And humans, it turns out, broadcast this information constantly, in ways we are entirely unconscious of. Dr. Timothy DeVoogd, a neuroscientist at Cornell University, who has studied avian cognition extensively, has described birds as living inside a continuous risk calculation. Every moment, they are asking a version of the same question. Is this safe? Can I stay? Your body answers that question before you open your mouth. The speed of your movement, the direction of your gaze, whether your eyes are oriented toward the bird or scanning past it, whether your shoulders are tense, whether you slow down as you pass or hold your line, whether you stop. Birds read these signals with the same fluency that we read human faces. They have had 40 million years of practice reading large terrestrial animals for signs of predatory intent. We are, from their perspective, simply another large terrestrial animal. One they have now had several thousand years of experience learning to decode. And some people, it seems, are remarkably easy to decode as safe. What the research consistently shows is that people who move slowly, who avoid direct prolonged eye contact, who do not orient their bodies aggressively, who remain calm in their own bodies. These people create a kind of presence that birds recognize, not as someone special, not through any mystical connection, but as a neutral object in the landscape, something that has been assessed and filed away as non-threatening. Once that assessment is made, the bird can stop fleeing and start watching. And this is where things become genuinely surprising. Because watching for a bird is not passive. It is information gathering, and certain birds will watch a person for a very specific reason, trying to figure out if that person might be useful. There is a behavior documented in several corvid species, crows, ravens, jays, that researchers have come to call associative learning towards specific individuals. In plain language, birds learn which humans reliably mean good things, and they begin to orient their behavior around those humans. This is different from domestication. A bird that watches it in this way hasn't bonded in the way a dog bonds. It's doing something more calculated, and in some ways more interesting. It is treating a human being as a feature of its territory. In the same way a crow maps the location of a reliable food source, a water supply, a safe roosting tree. It maps the movements of certain people. It knows when they appear. It knows their routines. It adjusts its own behavior based on their presence. A pair of ravens in a study at the University of Vienna demonstrated the ability to follow the gaze of a human, to look at what a human was looking at, and then to use that information. This is a cognitive behavior previously thought to be limited to great apes and human infants. It implies something about how birds model other minds. They are not just watching your face, they are modeling your attention, trying to understand not just where you are, but where your mind is pointing. For people who spend significant time outdoors, this has a strange, almost vertiginous implication. You have been watched in this way, mapped, assessed, filed away in a nervous system whose memory outlasts most human friendships. There are birds that know your schedule better than your neighbors do. Birds that have noted where you pause, which direction you look first, whether you carry a bag, whether you walk at the same pace on a rainy morning as on a clear one. You have been a landmark in someone else's world. possibly for years, without ever knowing it. The woman in Seattle with her gifts of blue glass and smooth pebbles describes this as humbling. Not in a sentimental way, but in a structural way. It rearranges something about how you understand your place in an ecosystem. You are not a visitor, moving through a passive backdrop. You are a known entity, a recurring character in a story that's being written around you. And sometimes, something more happens. In 2020, a team of researchers in Japan published a study that built on decades of corvid behavior work and arrived at a conclusion that stopped many in the field. They found that crows not only remembered individual humans, but appeared to communicate that information between flock members in ways that adjusted collective behavior. In other words, one crow's assessment of a person could influence how dozens of others responded to that same person. Your reputation in certain environments precedes you. But the deeper finding, the one that has lingered, came from a different direction entirely. Researchers studying bird stress responses noticed something unexpected when analyzing data from birds in areas with regular, familiar human presence. Birds in proximity to calm, consistent, non-threatening humans showed lower baseline corticosterone levels, the primary evidence in stress hormones, than birds in areas without this kind of regular human contact. The presence of certain kinds of people appears to measurably reduce the physiological stress of birds nearby, not because of anything the people were doing actively, not because they were feeding or sheltering the birds, simply because a familiar, safe presence over time recalibrates what the surrounding birds treat as normal. You become part of their baseline. And here is the thing that changes once you understand this. The transaction is not one-directional. Studies on human interaction with nature, particularly calm, attentive observation of wildlife, consistently show reductions in cortisol, in blood pressure, in the neurological markers of anxiety. The Japanese forest bathing tradition, Shinrin-yoku, has been measured in clinical settings. The effects are real and reproducible. So you have this remarkable, quiet loop. A person who moves through the natural world with attention and calm changes the stress physiology of the birds around them. And the birds, in turn, through their visible presence, their movement, their song, change something in the person. Each one making the other slightly safer, slightly calmer, slightly more at ease in a world that is, for both of them, full of uncertainty. Neither party aware that this is happening. Neither party, until perhaps now, understanding what it means. The crow in Seattle still visits, still leaves its small offerings. The woman who feeds it has gray hair now. The crow has been replaced, probably, by its offspring, birds that learn from their parent that this particular person at this particular door means safety. She is not special in the way we romanticize in stories. There is no spell, no gift, no chosen connection. She is simply someone who was consistently present, consistently calm, consistently there, and in the economy of a wild mind, making its way through a complicated world. That turned out to be enough. There is a quality of attention that changes things, not dramatic attention, not the attention of someone trying to see or be seen, but the older, quieter kind, the attention of someone who simply shows up in the same place, in the same way, over time, who is present without demand. Birds notice this. They're nervous. Systems are calibrated to notice this because consistency and calm are some of the rarest and most valuable things in a landscape full of noise. The next time a bird watches you, really watches you without startling, without looking away, Something is happening that is older than language, older than any science we have built to describe it. You are being read. You are being mapped. You are being decided about. And if you hold still long enough, with enough genuine quiet in your body, you may find that the decision goes in your favor.